Hey everybody. So I just spent quite a bit of the day, just working slowly and carefully at, getting everything all ready to go. I got the clutch stack on there. There's the pilot bushing that's inside there that I tapped in there with the hammer after I put it in the freezer for. It actually turned out to be almost like a couple of days that the pilot bushing was in the freezer, inside the box, inside a bag, before I actually got to it. So I tapped that in there with the socket, got it nice and flush with the crankshaft, put in the clutch lining tool after that, put on the friction disc after that, made sure that the right side is facing out, right? So the raised portion of the friction disc should be facing the transmission. So I double checked, because sometimes people put it on backwards and then they got to take everything all out again. So I made sure. One thing that I did notice when I was torquing down the pressure plate onto the friction disc, when everything was still in the kitchen, before it got rebuilt and all that stuff, I just wanted to see why these spring fingers, or whatever you call them, were so tight. I just wanted to see why it was so tight. And I was thinking that maybe they have to like the friction disc has to be tightened to the flywheel with the pressure plate on top of that fully for the springs to be a little bit loose, right? But that's not true. But well, maybe it is. I don't know. But anyways, what happened was I heard I kept on hearing these loud cracking noises, and so I stopped, right? But before I did this, with the rebuilt disc and the rebuilt pressure plate, I just double checked and I said, is hearing a cracking noise bad? And they're like, no, you shouldn't, there's springs in there and all that kind of stuff. But I think why I was hearing cracking noises is because maybe it was an old disc and it was just old, and maybe I had it flipped around when I was trying to tighten it on there, and that's why it was doing that when I had it on there. It was cracking because it was on the other way. But when I tightened it down today, no cracking noises, it all went well, and that felt pretty good, So what I did is I just tightened them all, finger tight, like diagonally crisscrossed, and then I tightened them down with the socket, crisscrossed, and then, then I torqued them down. Oh, that's where that 1/2-inch socket is. It's on the torque wrench. I was looking for it. I'm like, where is it? I guess I lost it. I don't know. But now I got it all sorted out. And so I torqued it down crisscross, right? I didn't just torque one down all the way and then move on to the next one. I torqued it a little bit and then went on to the next one and just sort of went, right? And so the pressure plate is contacting the flywheel, which is good. I was wondering if it should. I checked online. People said, yeah, it should. And there was one person that actually couldn't get his pressure plate to contact the flywheel when his bolts were all the way down, and it was discovered that his flywheel had been turned, resurfaced too much, and it took off too much of the surface of his flywheel, and so there wasn't enough flywheel there for the pressure plate to contact it. And I was wondering if that might happen to me, because I did get my flywheel resurfaced, but as you can see, I'm free of that worry, so that's good. Another thing I did is I was looking online at how to properly set your timing, and one of the things that I read was you can set your timing. I mean, if I'm saying this right, if I remember it right, good. If not, well, then that's the case. I mean, no one's perfect. But anyways, apparently one of the ways to get your timing set very effectively is to have your first cylinder on a compression stroke, so the piston will be going up, I guess, right? And so when I was turning the harmonic balancer, right, I noticed that some of the spark plug holes, the tape was being sucked in, and some of the tape was being pushed out. And so I was like, okay, if it's being pushed out, that's a compression stroke. because some of the instructions on that same thing that I was reading was advising to get a person to stick their finger in the spark plug hole and plug the spark plug hole with their finger, and when they feel like a compression against their finger, then they know that that cylinder is on the compression stroke. And so I did that. Well, I didn't do it with my finger, but I just put the tape on here, and I lifted the tape a little bit off each of the other holes so that it would be a little bit easier to turn the balancer, but it was pretty tough. I mean, it's not a broken-in engine, and so I guess that's why. But as you can see, it's puffed out a little bit. So this first cylinder right here is on the compression stroke, so I think that's good according to what I read. But the marks on the balancer are now, way over here. So I don't know what that means in conjunction with what I read before. So I guess your timing mark might be, it can be off, I guess, from the little pointer here. But if you got it set up so that it's on a compression stroke, I guess that's also effective. And not having your marks be on the pointer doesn't mean that you won't have an effective attempt at your startup. Yeah. So, okay, so I'm gonna get to it. So I got that all set up, and I did what I said I was gonna do, and I, checked into my notes here, and I did like a write-up. I wrote it all down, the step-by-step, procedure of what I was going to be doing, like attach flywheel to clutch in the crankshaft. Do I use Loctite? And then I researched it. Yes. Use clutch lining tool, put disc on flywheel. Tool goes into pilot bushing and splines of disc, acting like the input shaft, holding the disc in place, and on and on and on and on and on. So I wrote it all down like at least a couple of times. I did. I wrote it all down at least a couple of times just to make sure that I wasn't forgetting anything or anything like that. But one of the things that I wrote down was, after I get it all set up, and I'm really sure I did, just, sit down, have a coffee, stare at it, think about it, and just think it over really slowly. Like, did I forget anything? Think about what you did. Go through it in your mind. Something might, occur in your thoughts that, don't want to forget that. But, yeah, while I was having my coffee, just kind of thinking about it, the answer was no. I didn't forget anything. So I'm ready to go, I guess. So what I did also is I put on the new release bearing, and I cleaned up the splines of the input shaft. I put moly grease on the pivot right there, and also on the ball that goes into the pivot. So the ball and the pivot have been lubed with moly lubricant, or moly grease. It's a special kind of grease that fills abrasive score marks, like, I guess, not microscopically, but pretty darn close, and so it makes it smoother. And I also put some in the other area right there of the collar for the release bearing. And I also put some inside, right? Inside, there's like a groove in there. And so, like, this is all lubricated. There's a reservoir of grease, I guess I could say, that I packed with moly grease, very carefully, so that when it slides back and forth, when the clutch pedal is depressed, it's lubricated, and it's got like a bunch in there. I put a little bit of Never Seize, anti-seize, Permatex anti-seize on the splines for the friction disc to sort of slide back and forth on easily, and it won't get seized, but I don't really think that's a concern, really. I don't think it's going to get stuck. But I was researching it, and yeah, there was an old timer that made a comment, and he was like, I've been doing that for, I don't know, since the 1960s. And I was like, well, if he's been doing it since the 1960s, then that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. So that's why I did that. And I hooked up some springs. That's a good tip. Hook up a spring onto the edge of the clutch fork, and like have it hooked up somewhere, so that that will stay with some tension on it, and then your clutch fork won't fall off. You know, the pivot and also the bearing when you got the engine going in there, something like that. That would be pretty awful to have to take out the engine just to put that back in there. So that's a good safety measure. So yeah, I'm gonna get on with it. You know, everything's good to go as far as I know. You know, everything's all good to go. I do think I'm gonna need to put the phone down to start, you know, doing the work. You know, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do this with one hand. Right, so I got the wood that I talked about. I didn't buy it, but it's there. You know, and this is dirt, right? This is cement. But it just happens to be my bad luck that the trajectory of this wheel is going to go right into the dirt and it's going to get stuck like it did when I was here with my dad. So I put that wood down there to help me. Yeah, make sure the valve's closed on the piston. This thing can lift 12,000 pounds. And my engine weighs 550 pounds. Alright, I'm going to put down the phone and get to it. Alright, 1958 AMC Rambler Super Part 30. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.